What if I told you that, like, destroying your entire kitchen, nearly burning your dinner, and, just ending up staring at this sink totally full of crusty, grease-stained pots?
The absolute worst part of cooking, by the way.
Right. But what if I told you that was actually one of the most scientifically effective ways to master a foreign language?
It sounds completely counterintuitive, honestly.
It really does. But, I mean, have you ever looked at a seemingly simple recipe, read through the steps, and confidently thought to yourself, like, oh yeah, I can absolutely do that?
Oh, definitely. We all have.
Right. And then somehow, like 2 hours later, you end up standing in this literal culinary war zone, just, looking around at the destruction, wondering how a simple pasta dish turned into a disaster area.
It's a very universal experience.
It is. Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking a look at a genuinely fascinating piece of source material. It's a transcript of this highly entertaining conversation between two people.
Yeah, where one of them essentially threw down a gauntlet.
Exactly. The challenge was just, simple on the surface. Cook a full, proper meal from scratch.
Instead of just, reflexively reaching for their phone to order from a delivery app?
Yes. Abandoning the safety net of takeout to venture into the completely unknown territory of their own kitchen. And the transcript perfectly illustrates the messy, chaotic reality of human learning.
Because it's not just about learning how to roast a vegetable, right?
Right.
It captures the intense frustration, the rapid problem solving, and just the sheer emotional roller coaster of trying to acquire any complex new skill when you are starting from absolute zero.
Yeah, and we are going to explore this entire journey today, tracking the whole arc from that frantic panic of juggling raw ingredients all the way to the crushing, inescapable reality of doing the dishes afterward.
The inevitable aftermath.
Ugh, the worst. But the twist here, and really the reason this deep dive is about so much more than a cooking story, is that the source material uses this traumatic kitchen survival tale as a brilliantly clever vehicle.
Right, for mastering advanced C2 level English vocabulary and complex grammar.
Exactly. The words they use to describe the ordeal are just embedded so perfectly into the emotional highs and lows of the story, we actually get to see the mechanics of language acquisition in real time.
It's just a remarkable case study in how our brains encode information. Because, we do not learn effectively by staring at lists of definitions in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
We learn when information is tied to a visceral experience. Like the tension of nearly burning the garlic provides this necessary cognitive anchor for the vocabulary words used to describe that exact moment of panic.
Wow, yeah. Okay, let's unpack this by jumping right into the thick of the cook's journey. We need to look at why a menu that sounds, incredibly standard immediately induced a state of panic.
Or what the cook eloquently described as staring into a culinary abyss.
Yes, the culinary abyss. So the challenge was a classic 3-component meal. It was pan-seared chicken with a lemon butter sauce, roasted asparagus, and quinoa.
A very standard dinner.
Totally. Now, spoiler alert, he did return mostly intact. He actually proudly noted with a lot of relief that no smoke alarms were triggered.
Oh, that's always a plus.
Right. And his ceiling remained mercifully free of food-based art.
A very low bar for success, but a vital one for a beginner,
Absolutely. Because on paper, that menu sounds completely manageable. It's like the kind of meal you see in a Tuesday night dinner commercial.
Right. But the core conflict he ran into immediately was the language of the recipe itself.
Yes.
Despite attempting to follow the instructions meticulously, is the first great vocabulary word they emphasize there, meaning showing great attention to detail.
Meticulously, right.
Yeah, he just hit a brick wall when it came to the sheer ambiguity of the text.
Oh man, that word ambiguity, it really captures the essence of the beginner's struggle. Because he's reading phrases like sear until golden brown or simmer until the sauce thickens.
Which to an experienced chef is just a helpful prompt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to a total novice, the ambiguity is literally paralyzing. Like, what shade of golden are we actually talking about here?
Right. Is it a light tan? Is it the color of a dark penny?
Yes. And how thick is thick? Is it like heavy cream or is it like wet cement? Honestly, trying to follow a recipe as a total beginner is like trying to navigate a sprawling foreign city with a map that has half the street names missing.
That's a great way to put it.
It just assumes this baseline of knowledge and situational awareness that the beginner just does not possess yet.
Well, what's fascinating here is the massive gap between merely reading written instructions and actually possessing a functional skill.
Yeah.
The recipe is inherently flawed as an instructional tool because it fundamentally lacks sensory inputs.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
Like, text on a page or a screen cannot tell you exactly what the garlic should smell like right before it turns bitter and burns, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, you can't read a smell.
Exactly. It cannot replicate the precise sizzling sound a chicken breast makes when the pan is at the optimal temperature.
Wow, that is so true.
Those missing links are what the source material correctly refers to as intuition.
Intuition.
Yeah.
Or, as they later call it, second nature. When something is second nature, you don't even have to think about it.
Exactly.
But when you lack that second nature, the text just feels like an ancient, impenetrable code. The cook had to decipher these instructions in real time.
And decipher is such a perfect word choice there.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because it implies translating a hidden or complex code into understandable language, all while things are literally heating up and smoking in front of him.
Right, because an experienced cook isn't just reading the text, they're reading the physical environment.
Yeah.
They're relying on a vast mental library of sensory memories, past mistakes, past successes, the smell of butter browning versus butter burning.
And when you lack that internal library, every single instruction requires, active, intense cognitive processing.
Exactly. The recipe says medium heat, but the stove dials run from 1 to 10, and the pan is made of thin aluminum.
Oh man, all those variables.
Yeah. The beginner is trying to calculate all these variables simultaneously.
Which means the brain is essentially operating at maximum capacity, just trying to figure out what the words mean.
Exactly.
Because our novice cook lacked that intuition. And because he found the task completely daunting, meaning highly intimidating and seemingly impossible to deal with, he needed a robust system just to survive.
Just to get through the physical process of making the meal. Yeah.
Right. Because the musicians in his orchestra were not speaking the same language, and the timing was completely out of sync.
I mean, quinoa takes 20 minutes to absorb water, asparagus roasts incredibly quickly, and turns to mush if left too long.
Ugh, mushy asparagus is the worst.
It really is. And chicken can go from dangerously undercooked to chalky and dry in a matter of 3 minutes.
So juggling those distinct timelines requires a tremendous amount of working memory. He actually describes this phase of the process as a form of high-stakes project management.
That's hilarious.
His normally serene, minimalist kitchen transformed into a frantic command center. But the absolute lifesaver for him, the only thing that kept the meal from ending up in the trash, was a traditional French culinary concept.
Ah, mise en place.
Yes, mise en place, which literally translates to everything in its place.
Right.
It basically meant he spent a full 30 minutes just chopping, measuring, and putting all the raw ingredients into little individual bowls before he even turned on the stove.
Which is the strategic turning point of the entire ordeal.
True, but I am going to push back slightly on this concept, though.
Oh, really? Why?
Because as a casual observer, sometimes these French culinary terms feel incredibly pretentious.
Fair enough.
And the cook actually admitted that in the transcript. He said he felt ridiculous, like he was hosting a daytime television children's cooking show.
Just standing there with all his tiny glass bowls.
Yeah. Yes. Pre-measured salt, a tiny bowl of chopped garlic, a tiny bowl of measured oil. It feels so performative. So is spending an extra half hour dirtying a dozen tiny bowls actually a necessary step for a home cook just trying to make dinner?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of how the human brain functions under stress, we can see exactly why mise en place is not just culinary theater.
Okay, I'm listening.
It is a brilliant, scientifically sound method for managing cognitive load.
Oh, interesting.
Our working memory, right. The part of the brain that holds on to information for immediate processing, it's severely limited. It can only juggle a few distinct pieces of information at any given time.
That makes sense.
When you are a beginner, the mere physical act of chopping an onion requires a massive amount of your executive function.
Because you're consciously thinking about how to grip the knife.
Exactly. How to curl your fingers so you don't cut them off, what size the pieces should be.
So if you are trying to execute that knife work, while simultaneously monitoring the heat of a pan and trying to remember if you already salted the chicken.
Yeah. You are effectively redlining your brain's processing power. You crash, much like a computer trying to run too many heavy applications at once.
Oh, wow. Panic sets in because your cognitive load is totally maxed out.
Precisely. By utilizing mise en place, you are completely separating the preparation phase from the execution phase. You are outsourcing the measuring, the chopping, and the calculating to the past.
Outsourcing to the past. I love that.
Yeah, so when the stove is finally turned on and the heat is applied, your only job is assembly.
Wow, okay.
The brain is no longer overwhelmed by multitasking, which allows you to focus entirely on those sensory inputs. The smells, the sounds, the visual cues that we established earlier were missing from the written recipe.
Right. You turn chaos into what the cook perfectly described as a streamlined, albeit tense, assembly line.
It's just such a smart strategy.
Outsourcing the processing power to the past is a brilliant way to frame it. And because he relied on that mental safety net of mise en place, he actually managed to pull it off.
He did.
He got the meal on the table. Which brings us to this soaring, genuine moment of triumph. He notes that the chicken was not burnt, the quinoa was surprisingly fluffy, and the asparagus was, in his beautifully understated words, present.
Which, honestly, is truly all you can ask of asparagus on a first attempt.
Seriously. But the real highlight of the transcript was his description of making the lemon butter sauce. He built it in a dry pan for just a few simple raw ingredients, and he describes tasting it and feeling this profound spark of creation.
A real, undeniable sense of pride.
Yeah. He brought order to the chaos and created something genuinely delicious out of raw components.
It's the ultimate psychological reward, the dopamine hit of creating sustenance and mastering a challenge.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, though. We have to transition to how quickly and how brutally that triumph was undercut by the unglamorous reality of home cooking.
Oh, the cleanup.
The cleanup. After the meal comes the part that no one ever puts in those midweek dinner commercials. The aftermath.
It's always so bad.
He walks back into the kitchen, heavily full and tired, and the sink looks like a culinary battle had been fought, completely lost.
Yeah.
Every single pot, pan, cutting board, and tiny prep bowl he owned was caked in grease and food.
The hidden cost of the spark of creation.
Exactly. And he uses this phenomenal C2 level word to describe the cleanup. Drudgery.
Such a great word.
The drudgery of scrubbing all those dishes down. Drudgery doesn't just mean hard work. It specifically means hard, menial, dull, and profoundly unrewarding work.
Yes, very unrewarding.
He states that the drudgery almost completely negated the joy of the meal itself. His final verdict is hilariously brutally honest.
What do you say?
Well, he has said the experience absolutely demystified home cooking for him, meaning it removed the mystery and made the process clear.
Right.
And it gave him a profound respect for the skill involved. But ultimately, it just glorified the sheer beautiful convenience of his favorite delivery app.
I mean, I don't blame him.
Right. He basically vows to reserve the Everest expedition of a 3-component meal for very rare occasions. For normal nights, he is strictly sticking to one-pot dishes or takeout.
From a behavioral psychology standpoint, his conclusion makes perfect logical sense.
Really? How so?
Well, what he's describing is the real, often overlooked friction that prevents the formation of new habits. When we look at how habits are built, we see a loop of cue, routine, and reward.
Okay.
We repeat behaviors that offer an immediate satisfying reward, and we avoid behaviors that result in punishment.
So the cleanup is acting as a behavioral punishment.
It is. And it's the timing and the contrast that makes it a punishment.
Like, as you just had this great meal.
Exactly. The reward in this scenario was the spark of creation and the sensory pleasure of eating a good meal. But that reward is immediately followed by a massive spike in friction.
Menial labor when your physical energy is at its absolute lowest point.
Precisely. The pain of the drudgery is so sharp and so immediate that it overwrites the pride of the accomplishment in the brain's reward center.
Well,
If you want a habit to stick, the friction at the end of the routine has to be as low as possible. By dirtying all those tiny bowls for the mise en place, he saved himself during the cooking phase, but he actively guaranteed his own psychological punishment during the cleanup phase.
that is wild. The very tool that allowed him to succeed is the reason he never wants to do it again.
It's a fascinating paradox.
All right, so we have explored the emotional highs, the practical lows, the stress, and the behavioral psychology of the kitchen. But now we have to pull back the curtain and reveal the clever meta layer of the source material we've been working from.
The language aspect.
Yes, because this entire cooking ordeal was actually a Trojan horse. The source material is beautifully constructed educational material for language learners.
The authors effortlessly wove highly advanced English vocabulary and complex grammatical structures directly into a highly relatable narrative.
They really did. At the end of their conversation, the two speakers actually break the fourth wall a bit and recap the exact words they used to describe the ordeal. Let's look at the sheer density of the vocabulary here, right?
It's impressive.
We've got daunting, meticulously, ambiguity, decipher, intuition, second nature, mise en place, infinitely, aftermath, drudgery, and demystify.
All excellent words.
But it goes beyond just impressive vocabulary words. The source material tackles one of the most notoriously difficult grammatical structures in the English language.
Ah, yes. The third conditional with inversion.
Yes. Okay, so at one point, reflecting on the sheer exhaustion of the cleanup, the cook says, had I known just how much concentration it would demand, I probably would have just ordered a pizza.
Had I known.
Right. He doesn't say if I had known. He drops the if entirely, takes the auxiliary verb had, and places it before the subject I.
Exactly.
So what makes this specific grammatical choice so advanced, and why do it at all?
Well, it is a hallmark of C2 level fluency because it manipulates the standard rules of syntax to create a specific rhetorical effect.
Okay, a rhetorical effect.
By dropping the if and inverting the subject and verb, the speaker instantly elevates the formality and the dramatic tension of the sentence.
Oh, I see. It sounds a bit more literary, a bit more tragic.
Exactly. It emphasizes the regret of the hypothetical past situation much more strongly than a standard if clause. It is essentially the linguistic equivalent of a heavy sigh.
I love that. The linguistic equivalent of a heavy sigh. He even jokes at the end of the transcript that while the kitchen was destroyed, his trauma was at least linguistically productive.
Silver linings, right?
Now, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why does this specific method of learning matter?
Well, it points directly to the neuroscience of how we actually absorb and retain complex information.
It really does. Think about it. How much easier is it to permanently remember the exact meaning and emotional weight of the word drudgery when you can vividly picture a guy standing over a sink full of crusty, burnt pots, sighing heavily?
Way easier than just reading the word drudgery translated on a sterile flashcard.
Exactly.
This raises an important question about our traditional approaches to education, Rote memorization, like staring at lists of words and translating them back and forth, is incredibly inefficient.
Right, because it's just boring.
Well, the brain struggles to hold on to isolated data points because there is no network of related information to anchor them. When you attempt to memorize a word in a vacuum, it literally has no biological significance to the brain.
It is just data floating in a void, waiting to be overwritten by tomorrow's grocery list.
Precisely. But when you anchor a complex vocabulary word or an advanced grammar rule to a high-emotion, highly relatable narrative like the universal panic of burning dinner, you provide the brain with contextual hooks.
Contextual hooks.
This triggers a very specific biological mechanism. Emotional spikes, whether it is frustration, panic, or pride, activate the amygdala.
Right, the emotional center.
Yes. The amygdala then signals the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory consolidation, tagging that specific moment as important.
So it essentially tells the brain, hey, this matters, we were stressed, remember the tools we used to navigate this?
Exactly. The brain is literally wired to remember stories and the emotions tied to them. By embedding the learning material inside a narrative of struggle and resolution, the source material ensures deep, long-term retention.
That makes total sense.
You aren't just memorizing the definition of ambiguity, your brain is encoding the stress the cook felt when he read golden brown and lacked the intuition to decipher it.
The emotional context acts as the glue that binds the vocabulary to your long-term memory.
Yes.
You are living the word through the narrative. That is such a powerful takeaway, and it completely changes the way you should look at trying to memorize anything, whether it's a language, a scientific concept, or even a presentation for work.
Do not just learn the definition.
Right. Find the story where that concept lives. Find the emotional hook.
When you connect abstract information to a tangible human experience, the retention rate just skyrockets.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to wrap up this incredible multi-layered journey today, we navigated the daunting ambiguity of recipe language and the paralysis of lacking sensory intuition.
A real struggle.
We discovered the absolute sanity-saving magic of the French mise en place and how it physically protects our limited cognitive load.
Yes.
We faced the crushing drudgery of the aftermath at the kitchen sink, exploring how immediate friction can destroy habit formation. And almost without realizing it, we walked away with a highly robust vocabulary of advanced English terms, firmly anchored in our minds through the neuroscience of storytelling.
A remarkably productive expedition, despite the casualty of the dirty dishes.
I would definitely say so. Now, the source material ended with a great question for its audience, and I want to throw that exact same question directly to you, listening right now.
Oh, this is a good one.
Thinking about your own kitchen habits, which camp are you currently in? Do you have a specific culinary triumph, a dish that you make entirely from scratch and are immensely proud of?
Or, on the flip side, is there a dish you strategically surrender to?
Right. Something you will always, without fail, order in because the drudgery of making it at home is simply not worth the hassle.
I think everyone has at least one strategic surrender in their repertoire.
Okay.
The dish that demands just way too much cognitive load for a Tuesday.
We absolutely do. Authentic pad thai is mine. I tried it once. The tamarind paste got literally everywhere. The noodles clumped together, and the kitchen looked like a disaster zone.
Oh, no.
I surrender completely to the takeout menu for that one. But before we leave you today, I want to give you one final provocative thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we have unpacked.
Okay.
We have seen how the physical act of mise en place, prepping your ingredients, organizing your physical space in advance, can entirely prevent kitchen chaos by freeing up your working memory for the actual execution of the task. But what if you took that concept completely out of the kitchen?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. How might applying a mental mise en place, taking the dedicated time to prep, sort, and compartmentalize your thoughts, your priorities, and your emails before the day begins, transform the way you handle the high-stress, rapidly boiling situations in your everyday life?
It is all about preparing the workspace of your mind before the heat gets turned up by external demands.
It really is. Something to think about the next time you find yourself staring at a recipe, a massive work project, or just a Tuesday morning, confidently thinking, I can absolutely do that, before the metaphorical flour starts hitting the ceiling. We'll catch you next time. Picture this. It's 6 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Oh, the absolute danger zone.
Right. It's the danger zone. You just walk through your front door, you drop your keys on the counter, and you look over at your kitchen. And I really want you to think about what the immediate visceral feeling in your gut is in that exact second.
Because it's definitely not the same for everyone.
Exactly. For some people, looking at that kitchen is like looking at a sanctuary. You know, it's an invitation to just unwind. But for others, it feels like looking at a ticking time bomb of chores and stress and unmade decisions.
Yeah, it's a profound divide.
It really is. And today on this deep dive, we're unpacking exactly why that moment feels so fraught. We're pulling from this really fascinating audio segment from a show called Pod Zone.
Such a great show.
It is. The hosts, Emma and John, they're having what seems like a standard debate, right? Cooking at home versus ordering takeout. But our mission today isn't to tell you how to save 20 minutes or a few bucks.
Right, it goes way deeper than that.
Way deeper. We are going to decode the underlying psychology of your food choices. Figure out what they say about your need for control versus efficiency. And this is the best part. Uncover how this entire debate was actually this brilliant Trojan horse for a masterclass in language acquisition.
Which is just so clever. But to start with that kitchen moment, it really is the ultimate modern threshold.
How do you mean?
Well, you cross that line into the kitchen, and you are immediately confronted with a choice that basically dictates the physical and mental trajectory of your entire evening.
Right.
Our daily habits, especially around something as primal as sourcing our food, they're never just about logistics. They are, micro reflections of our broader psychological baseline.
Okay, so let's start with the baseline Emma establishes. Because listening to her describe making dinner is honestly kind of wild if you don't share her mindset.
Oh, for sure.
She describes the kitchen as a place to ground herself. For her, cooking is this deliberate sensory experience of mindfulness. She talks about the methodical rhythm of chopping vegetables and the specific aroma of garlic hitting a hot pan as these necessary tools to decompress after a mentally taxing day.
Decompress is the perfect word for it.
Yeah, and I hear that, but I really have to wonder, is she actually experiencing true mindfulness, or are we just sort of culturally romanticizing domestic labor? Because, for a lot of people, chopping an onion isn't a spa treatment.
Right, it's just a chore.
Yeah, it's just a chore standing between them and their couch.
Well, it's a fair question, but there is actual neurobiology backing up Emma's experience here.
Wait, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So When you are at work, especially in like a knowledge economy job, you are spending your day heavily in your prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so the thinking part of the brain.
Exactly. You're dealing with abstract thoughts, you're writing emails, you're future planning, navigating office politics. It is heavily cognitive. And that often triggers the brain's default mode network, which is where we do all of our ruminating and stressing.
I am very familiar with the ruminating network.
We all are, right? But when Emma starts chopping vegetables, she shifts. She engages her somatosensory cortex and her motor cortex.
So she's physically forcing her brain to change gears.
Precisely. By engaging in a manual, sensory-rich task, you are literally pulling metabolic resources away from the abstract, stress-inducing parts of your brain and routing them into the physical present. The smell of garlic hitting oil isn't just nice. Olfactory signals travel directly to the limbic system, which manages emotion and memory.
So it's basically a physiological grounding technique.
Yeah, the predictable chemistry of cooking, heat plus food equals a meal. It provides a deep sense of order when your workday just felt completely chaotic.
Okay, that makes total sense for Emma. But then we have John. And John is, he's basically staring blankly into an open refrigerator, hoping a meal will just magically assemble itself.
A very relatable experience.
Highly relatable. For John, the sheer thought of orchestrating a meal induces pure anxiety. He points out that just the decision-making process alone, figuring out what to cook, doing the mental inventory of ingredients, worrying if the final product will even be edible, it's a massive burden.
It really is. It makes me wonder, is the modern kitchen basically a psychological Rorschach test? Because while Emma sees this tranquil spa, John's experience sounds more like an air traffic control tower during a thunderstorm.
That is a great analogy.
Right. Every pot on the stove is a plane that might crash if you look away for 2 seconds.
The air traffic control analogy is spot on. What John is experiencing is the clinical reality of cognitive overload and decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue is so real.
It is. Every choice we make throughout the day draws down on this finite reserve of mental energy. Psychologists sometimes refer to it as ego depletion. Okay, ego depletion.
Yeah. So by 6 p.m., John's executive function is just running on fumes. Managing an air traffic control tower requires immense working memory. You have to sequence events, monitor changing states, manage risk.
And he just doesn't have the juice left for that.
Right. If your cognitive resources are already depleted, asking your brain to sequence a multi-step recipe isn't relaxing. It's an overwhelming demand on a tapped-out system.
So if the kitchen is an air traffic control tower and John's brain is tapped out, his primary goal is just to avoid a crash.
Exactly.
So he takes off the headset and hands it to someone else. He opens a delivery app and orders takeout.
Which is a perfectly rational survival strategy for him.
It is. But Emma pushes back hard on this strategy. She uses a very specific, heavy word to describe his reliance on takeout. She calls it an abdication of responsibility.
Abdication, yeah, that's strong.
It really is. She argues that by constantly ordering in, you become a passive consumer rather than an active creator, and that results in a genuine loss of agency.
Well, abdication is a powerful framing. It implies that feeding yourself isn't just a chore, but this fundamental domain of adulthood that you are actively surrendering.
Right.
What Emma is touching on here aligns with Albert Bandura's theory of self-efficacy.
Which is what, exactly?
So self-efficacy is our belief in our own ability to exert control over our environment and achieve outcomes.
Okay.
When you create something tangible, even just a simple home-cooked meal, you are reinforcing to your brain that you are capable and self-sufficient.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. And when you constantly outsource that creation, you slowly erode that psychological reinforcement. You're basically telling your brain, I cannot handle this basic survival task.
Wow. I mean, I see the philosophical logic there, but framing a Tuesday night takeout order as abdicating a fundamental human duty feels a little dramatic to me.
It is a bit intense.
And John flips that script entirely. He defends his takeout habit not as a surrender, but as highly efficient delegation.
Delegation, yes.
He says, look, I don't fix my own car. I don't tailor my own suits. I delegate those highly specific tasks to skilled experts. So why on earth should food be any different?
John is applying the macroeconomic principle of the division of labor right into his domestic life.
Which makes sense.
It's a purely rational stance. If someone else possesses a comparative advantage in cooking, meaning they can produce a better meal in less time, economic theory actually suggests you should trade your capital for their labor.
He's just prioritizing efficiency.
Exactly. Why spend 2 hours doing something you were bad at, generating all that anxiety and a mediocre result, when you can just pay a specialist to do it perfectly?
And that economic friction is perfectly captured when John introduces this concept that I absolutely loved. He calls it the tyranny of the spice rack.
Oh, the tyranny of the spice rack. It is the perfect encapsulation of the barrier to entry for novice cooks.
It really is. He argues that if he wants to make like a passable Thai green curry from scratch, he has to go out and buy a plethora of hyper-specific ingredients. Fish sauce, galangal, kaffir lime leaves. He buys all this stuff. He makes the dish exactly once, and then these obscure jars just languish in the back of his pantry for the rest of eternity.
Just gathering dust.
I completely relate to this. Buying an entire root of galangal for one Tuesday night curry feels like buying an entire commercial gym just because you want to use the treadmill once.
That is exactly what it feels like.
It's completely disproportionate.
Yeah.
Are we even talking about food at this point? Or is this really a debate about modern resource management?
We are absolutely talking about resource management. Specifically, we're looking at the tension between short-term efficiency and long-term skill investment.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
So, John is fixated on the sunk cost. The upfront investment of time, money, and mental bandwidth for a single uncertain outcome to him, it's mathematically irrational.
Right.
Emma, however, counters by looking at the long tail of that investment. She argues that, yes, buying the fish sauce feels like a heavy lift the first time, but once you invest in those staple items, they don't have to languish.
You just have to learn how to use them.
Exactly. You are unlocking an entire culinary repertoire.
So she views the spice rack as an investment portfolio, whereas John basically views it as a liability.
That's it. John is optimizing his resources for tonight, zero friction, guaranteed calories. Emma is optimizing for the decade. She's advocating for building a foundational skill that pays compounding dividends.
But John's method of outsourcing has a massive vulnerability, doesn't it?
Huge. If you hand over the cognitive load of cooking to a restaurant, you are simultaneously handing over the quality control of your nutrition.
Which is exactly where Emma catches him. We have to confront what is actually being sacrificed in exchange for that short-term efficiency.
Right, the health aspect.
Exactly. Emma points out the undeniable stigma attached to takeout, that it is inherently unhealthy. And she argues this isn't just cultural snobbery, it's rooted in the biological reality of how restaurant food is engineered.
She's entirely correct about the engineering. I mean, restaurants operate on a profit motive. And to drive repeat business, they have to optimize for palatability.
They want it to taste amazing.
Exactly. In food science, this is often referred to as hitting the bliss point.
A bliss point.
Yeah, it's the exact combination of salt, sugar, and fat that maximizes sensory pleasure and actually overrides our natural satiety signals. They're incorporating lipids and sodium at levels a home cook would intuitively balk at.
Oh, for sure. The portion sizes alone are just exorbitant. Emma's argument is that when you cook at home, you maintain absolute sovereignty over what goes into your body. You see exactly how much butter is going into that pan.
Right.
But John hilariously bursts this home cooking is a health utopia bubble. He points out that without actual acquirable culinary skills, his version of healthy home cooking is just a piece of unseasoned boiled chicken and sad, limp broccoli.
The sad broccoli reality, it's such a profound counterpoint.
It really is.
We have this tendency to compare the worst, greasiest takeout meal to an idealized chef-level home-cooked meal. But for the average stressed professional whose skills are lacking, the reality of healthy home cooking is often grim. It's unappetizing and ultimately unsustainable.
Yeah.
Willpower is a finite resource, and nobody is going to consistently choose unseasoned chicken over a professionally engineered meal.
Especially not after a 9-hour workday. Furthermore, John argues that the entire takeout is unhealthy stigma is actually becoming obsolete.
How so?
Well, we aren't just limited to greasy pizza anymore. There's been a massive surge in bespoke, keto-friendly, macro-counted, plant-based delivery services. You can literally open an app and get a perfectly balanced, nutritionist-approved meal handed to you at your front door.
Yeah, the food delivery industry has recognized this exact psychological friction. They realize consumers want the health benefits of Emma's absolute sovereignty, but the cognitive ease of John's delegation.
Best of both worlds.
Right. These bespoke services are attempting to solve the dilemma by offering outsourced health. But of course, that solution introduces a completely different barrier.
The cost. Emma fires right back, noting that these bespoke, hyper-healthy delivery services carry a serious premium price tag. She points out that a humble, home-cooked lentil soup remains one of the most nutritious and economical meals on Earth,
It's true.
which really made me rethink this entire dynamic. With the rise of these expensive, bespoke delivery options, has the health debate shifted? Like, is eating well no longer a test of willpower and culinary skill, but simply a test of wealth?
I mean, that is the crux of the modern food dilemma. The democratization of healthy food is still heavily tethered to the kitchen.
Because of the markups.
Exactly. When you order that bespoke plant-based bowl, you aren't just paying for the kale and the quinoa. You are absorbing the restaurant's commercial rent, the labor cost of the prep cooks, the packaging, the delivery app's 30% margin, the driver's fee.
It adds up fast.
It's a luxury service. So while the takeout landscape is absolutely evolving, for the vast majority of people, mastering that lentil soup really remains the only economically viable path to consistent long-term health.
It really is a fascinating philosophical impasse between the two of them. Emma prioritizes control, creativity, and the therapeutic process.
And John prioritizes efficiency, variety, and freedom from domestic labor.
Right. But if you've been listening to the specific words I've been highlighting throughout this breakdown, you might have noticed something. Words like decompress, abdication, delegate, plethora, languish, staple, stigma, exorbitant, acquirable, and obsolete.
Ah, yes. This is the brilliant meta layer of the source material we're examining today, and honestly, it changes the entire context of their conversation.
It blew my mind. The entire Pod Zone debate, it wasn't just a lifestyle show. It was a highly structured educational framework. Emma and John were intentionally using this relatable, everyday dilemma to teach C2 level English vocabulary.
It is a phenomenal pedagogical strategy. C2, just for context, is the highest level of proficiency in the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages.
So, like, really advanced.
Very. It represents near-native, highly nuanced mastery. The traditional way of teaching vocabulary at this level is often rote memorization, flashcards and dry textbook lists. And neurologically, rote memorization is incredibly inefficient for long-term retention.
Because it's completely divorced from reality. I studied language in school, and memorizing a list of verbs feels like trying to hold sand in your hands. It just slips away.
Exactly.
But here, instead of a list, they anchored these advanced words to an emotional high-stakes debate. You don't forget the word languish when you can vividly picture a sad, expensive, forgotten lime leaf slowly dying in the back of your own pantry.
No, you don't.
And you immediately grasp exorbitant when you think about the markup on a delivery salad.
Right. What they are executing here is known as contextual learning, specifically leveraging emotional anchoring.
How does that work in the brain?
Well, when your brain encounters new information, if it has no context, it basically sits in your short-term working memory and is quickly discarded.
The sand slipping through the fingers.
Yes. However, when you attach a new vocabulary word to a relatable frustration, like guilt over wasting food or the stress of coming home to a messy kitchen, you activate the amygdala.
The emotion center.
Exactly. The amygdala processes emotion, and it essentially flags that new word as emotionally significant. This signals the hippocampus to prioritize moving that information into long-term storage.
So by making us care about John's sad broccoli, they are literally tricking our brains into learning English.
It isn't a trick. It's actually working with the brain's natural architecture. In neuroscience, there's a principle often summarized as neurons that fire together wire together.
I've heard that.
Yeah. By weaving a complex word like abdication into a passionate argument about independence, they create robust, interconnected neural pathways. The semantic meaning of the word is wired directly to the emotional memory of the debate.
That makes total sense.
It's why you, listening to this deep dive right now, are highly likely to remember this exact vocabulary set long after we finish speaking. The emotional context provides the glue.
It is so clever, and the way they wrap up their show serves as the perfect climax to both the food debate and the language lesson. Emma officially throws down the gauntlet.
She does.
She challenges John to cook one complete 3-component meal from scratch. She promises him a foolproof recipe, but she demands that he actually experience the process and face the kitchen.
And John's reaction is deeply revealing.
He hesitates. He completely freezes and immediately starts backpedaling. He tells Emma he needs to check his delivery app to see what's available before he commits to this high-stakes culinary exam.
He is terrified.
He's so terrified of giving up his delegation.
His hesitation perfectly illustrates behavioral inertia and activation energy.
Meaning what?
Once we establish a pathway of least resistance, in John's case, a dopamine loop of tapping an app and receiving hot food deviating from that pathway requires a massive surge of mental energy.
Right.
Emma isn't just asking him to cook a meal. She is asking him to overcome the psychological friction of altering a deeply ingrained habit loop.
It's ask a lot of a tired brain. So bringing this all back to you, listening right now, the next time you find yourself staring at your kitchen at 6 p.m., keys in hand, I really want you to ask yourself, where do you actually fall on this spectrum?
Yeah.
Do you relate more to Emma seeking a sensory grounding in the methodical chopping of vegetables? Or are you with John perfectly happy to efficiently delegate the cognitive load so you can just eat in peace?
Look, there is no universally right answer here, but understanding the mechanisms behind your choice, whether you are seeking to shift out of your default mode network or trying to manage executive depletion, it can profoundly change how you structure your evenings.
You stop judging yourself.
Exactly. You stop judging yourself and you start actively managing your cognitive resources.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up today, let's leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something that goes beyond time management, beyond the economics of delivery fees, and even beyond English vocabulary. What if our increasing reliance on takeout, our intense desire to constantly outsource this fundamental human task, isn't just about saving time or chasing better flavors?
What if it reflects a broader societal shift?
Yeah. What if we are simply becoming deeply, profoundly uncomfortable with the messy, unpredictable, and sometimes fail-prone process of creating things from scratch in our daily lives?
Oh, wow.
Think about it. Cooking requires us to risk making something bad. It requires us to tolerate imperfection. Maybe, just maybe, the delivery app is simply our modern way of buying certainty in a highly uncertain world.
That is definitely something to chew on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
You know that moment when you're like staring down at a recipe and instead of feeling hungry, you just feel this creeping sense of impending doom.
Oh, yeah. Like you're holding a spatula and a whisk, but the recipe reads like, a complex architectural blueprint for a suspension bridge or something.
Exactly. You're scanning this list of ingredients and the fractions and all these specialized verbs like, julienne or deglaze.
Right, which sound terrifying.
They do. And it just stops looking like dinner. It looks like a recipe for a total meltdown.
Yeah, and then there's the alternative, right? You just cave.
Right, you cave. You pull out your phone, you order takeout, and the second that delivery driver hands you the bag, you feel this sharp little twinge of guilt.
Ah, yes. The modern culinary dilemma. It's basically the guilt of convenience versus the sheer terror of the kitchen.
For sure.
We want the accomplishment of a home-cooked meal, but, we are terrified of the friction it takes to actually get there. It's a tension most of us navigate every single week.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today we are exploring a really fascinating piece of source material that tackles this exact tension.
It really gets to the heart of it.
It does. We are looking at a saga from a show called Pod Zone, and it features a reluctant cook named John.
Very reluctant.
Yeah, heavily reluctant. He got challenged by his co-host Emma to just confront his kitchen anxiety head on. But what starts as this, lighthearted culinary battle between home cooking and takeout, it actually evolves into an incredible exploration.
Right, of how we tackle intimidating new skills.
Exactly. The psychology of preparation and ultimately the true hidden value of modern convenience.
It's basically a journey from absolute panic to a really profound realization about how we spend our time and our mental energy.
Yeah, and by the time we are done here, this deep dive is going to completely reframe how you view both the physical act of cooking and the absolute miracle of food delivery.
Big promises, but it really does shift your perspective.
It totally did for me. So, to really understand why this challenge was such a psychological hurdle, we have to look at what John was actually asked to do.
Right, set the scene.
So John is someone who actively avoids the kitchen. He does not find any joy in it. But Emma didn't just ask him to, fry an egg or boil pasta.
That would be too easy.
Way too easy. She assigned him a full 3-component meal from scratch. Pan-seared salmon with a dill sauce, roasted asparagus, and lemon-infused couscous.
Which, I mean, Emma framed this as a classic dish built on simple techniques.
Simple? Yeah.
Right, but the gap between an expert calling something simple and a novice actually experiencing it, it's massive.
Oh, completely.
John read that menu, and his immediate reaction was that this was a deliberately complex trap. He actually noted that he approached his kitchen with the trepidation of a bomb disposal expert.
A bomb disposal expert, which honestly perfectly captures the stakes he felt. It's not really about the food, is it? It's about the catastrophic potential for failure. Think about it like handing someone the sheet music for a full Beethoven symphony.
Oh, wow.
Right, and demanding a performance tonight. But their entire musical background is like playing Hot Cross Buns on a plastic recorder in the 3rd grade.
That is a terrifying image.
Right. It isn't just that they don't know the notes. The sheer volume of information being thrown at them completely paralyzes their ability to even start.
What's fascinating here is the precise nature of that paralysis. Because the intimidation John is experiencing doesn't actually stem from the physical act of cooking itself.
Right. It's not heavy lifting.
Exactly. Holding a chef's knife isn't inherently terrifying if you know how to hold it. Turning a dial on a stovetop doesn't require immense physical strength. The fear comes entirely from the mental load of the unknown.
It sounds like his brain is just running out of RAM.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, if we think of our working memory like a computer's short-term memory, John just has way too many applications open.
Yeah, they're all draining his battery.
He's consciously processing things a chef just does automatically in the background.
That is the exact mechanism at play. I mean, in cognitive science, there's a concept known as chunking.
Okay, chunking.
Yeah. So when you are an expert at something, your brain groups smaller, discrete pieces of information into larger, manageable chunks. Think about driving a car.
Oh, good example.
When you drive, you don't consciously think about adjusting the mirror, checking your blind spot, applying the blinker, easing off the gas, and turning the wheel as 5 separate monumental tasks.
Right, you'd crash if you did.
Exactly. Your brain chunks all of that into one fluid action, which is just change lanes.
But for a 16-year-old on their very first driving lesson, every single one of those micro steps requires active, intensely focused cognitive processing.
Yes.
They are sweating just trying to keep the car straight while, checking the speedometer.
Precisely. And for John in the kitchen, there are no chunks.
0 chunks.
Right. He has to read the recipe, comprehend the specific instruction, translate that text into a physical action with his hands, monitor the progress of the food, and somehow anticipate the next step.
All at the same time?
All while the environment around him, the rising heat, the ticking clock, the sizzling sounds, it's constantly shifting. It is a massive spike in cognitive load.
So it isn't a fear of the salmon itself.
No.
It's the fear of losing control over all these moving variables. He is terrified of this cascading failure where just one misstep ruins the entire delicate system.
Exactly. The whole thing just collapses.
Right. So when your brain is redlining like that and you are terrified of losing control, how do you prevent a total system crash?
Well, he found a way.
He did. John found a highly specific defense mechanism. Before he even considered turning on a stove burner, he adopted a tactic that took him 30 full minutes.
A very specific 30 minutes.
Yes, 30 minutes in the kitchen doing absolutely no cooking.
Right. He utilized a foundational culinary concept called mise en place, which translates roughly to everything in its place.
Everything in its place.
Yeah. So he methodically chopped the dill. He carefully zested the lemon. He measured out the exact amount of couscous and water.
Yeah, according to the transcript, he lined up all these little bowls on his counter, feeling like a scientist conducting this highly methodical experiment.
Which is great for the cognitive load.
And he noted that doing this substantially lowered his anxiety levels. But I have to push back on this because...
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when I read this part, my first thought was, doesn't dirtying 20 tiny bowls just create a completely different kind of anxiety?
Oh. You mean the impending doom of the cleanup?
Exactly. While I'm delicately placing, chopped dill into a beautiful little ceramic ramekin, all I can think about is the absolute mountain of dishes I am generating for myself later.
I get that.
Aren't we just deferring the panic from the cooking phase to the cleaning phase?
It's a very fair critique.
Yeah.
And honestly, it heavily foreshadows the aftermath of this entire experiment, which we will definitely dissect.
Oh, we will.
But if we isolate the immediate psychological benefit in that specific moment of preparation, the value becomes really clear.
Okay, how so?
By separating the preparation from the actual execution of the cooking, John took a dynamic, unpredictable, high-pressure environment and temporarily turned it into a static, highly controlled one.
So he's splitting the job in half.
Yes.
Instead of trying to prep and cook simultaneously, which would, completely max out his cognitive RAM, he's front-loading the cognitive work.
Exactly. Because when you are aggressively chopping onions while oil's getting smoking hot in a pan right next to you, your attention is dangerously split.
Yeah, that's when you lose a finger.
Literally. You are making rapid-fire calculations under extreme pressure. But mise en place removes the pressure of time entirely. It allows you to operate at your own pace. So when the heat is finally on, you aren't doing math or frantically searching drawers for a specific measuring spoon. You've already solved the puzzle. Now you're just putting the pieces together.
That makes a lot of sense. And this concept stretches way beyond the kitchen, too.
Oh, absolutely.
It makes me think about how we approach daunting tasks in our daily lives. Like, if you're stressed about building a massive spreadsheet for a work presentation,
Right.
the equivalent of mise en place isn't writing the formulas while you're, standing in front of your boss.
Definitely not.
It's organizing your data beforehand. It's clearing your physical desktop and closing your email inbox so you don't get derailed by notifications. You are hoarding your attention fragments.
Yes, hoarding your attention.
You are clearing the runway so the plane can take off without hitting any debris.
And John desperately needed that clear runway. Because even with his 20 little bowls perfectly lined up and his cognitive load managed, he still had to cross the threshold.
He had to actually cook.
Right. He had to face the actual execution.
The crucible of the kitchen, the convergence of time, heat, and raw ingredients. This is where the training wheels finally come off.
Yeah, the safety net is gone.
And reading John's account of this phase, it sounds completely exhausting. He had to juggle the three components, and the clash of variables was intense.
Because despite all the mise en place in the world, time is the one element you cannot prepare for in advance.
Right. It just keeps ticking.
It moves forward whether you are ready or not.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out the timing for a screaming hot skillet on the stove for the salmon, while simultaneously dealing with an oven set to a totally different temperature for roasting the asparagus.
Which is tricky.
Super tricky. And then trying to remember that the couscous just needs to sit and absorb boiling water without turning into glue.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's like trying to merge onto a busy highway in 3 different cars at the exact same time.
That is a stressful visual.
Right. One requires you to accelerate rapidly. One needs a slow, steady cruise, and the other is just idling.
The mental gymnastics required to pace those 3 distinct cooking methods so they all finish at the exact same moment. It is staggering for a beginner.
Staggering.
The transcript actually notes that his fear of public humiliation on the show was the only thing that kept him going when he wanted to throw in the towel.
Which is hilarious. But here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
He pushes through that intense friction. He navigates the highway merge without crashing. And as he plates the food, he experiences this profound breakthrough.
A real shift.
Yeah. He tastes the dill sauce he made, which was just yogurt, lemon, and dill, and it completely shifts his worldview.
He experienced what his co-host Emma called the spark of creation.
The spark of creation. He realizes this creamy, flavorful sauce didn't just, come from a jar at the grocery store.
Right.
It didn't arrive at his door in a plastic container. He created it with his own 2 hands.
From scratch.
Right. He went from feeling like a terrified bomb disposal expert to feeling like an alchemist who just successfully turned raw materials into something valuable. It transforms these disparate, mundane ingredients into a cohesive, elevated experience.
The psychological high he's describing here isn't just about producing edible food.
What is it about then?
The real epiphany, the core insight of this entire challenge, was the demystification of the skill itself.
The demystification.
Yeah, because for a novice, cooking often feels like an innate magical talent. You either possess the magic or you don't. And when you order takeout, you're essentially paying for the end result of someone else's magic.
Right, you're outsourcing the magic. But standing in his kitchen, tasting that sauce, the illusion shattered.
Totally shattered. He realized that cooking is just an acquirable skill.
Just a set of instructions.
Exactly. It is merely a sequence of physical actions, chopping, heating, mixing, that produce a predictable result when governed by basic chemistry. He learned that he actually possesses the agency to create complex things.
It really makes you evaluate how many other things in life we assume are magic just because we haven't broken them down into methodical steps yet.
Oh, all the time.
Like we see a beautifully designed website or we watch someone fix a car engine and we think, I could never do that. That's magic.
Right, we just assume it's beyond us.
But it's just a sequence of actions. It's incredibly empowering. He realizes, oh, I am fully capable of doing this.
It is a moment of profound personal agency. He conquered the unknown.
But just when the story reaches this triumphant cinematic peak, reality crashes the party.
It always does.
The meal is eaten, the salmon was surprisingly good, the spark of creation was definitely felt, but the kitchen remains.
Yes, the kitchen is still there.
The inevitable return to earth.
The aftermath. And this is where your earlier point about the 20 little bowls comes back with an absolute vengeance.
It totally does. I knew it.
Yeah.
John describes his sink as a graveyard of pots, pans, cutting boards, and yes, all those little mise en place bowls.
So many bowls.
So many. And he makes a very striking observation. The drudgery of scrubbing everything down, especially while he was full and exhausted from the cognitive marathon it almost completely eclipsed the joy of the meal itself.
The menial labor threatened to erase the psychological high of the epiphany.
Yeah.
This is where the romanticized Instagram filter view of home cooking collides violently with the brick wall of domestic reality.
So what does this all mean?
Right.
You might expect a story like this to end with John saying, I am a convert. I will never order takeout again. I am a chef.
The fairy tale ending.
But he doesn't do that. He says he will occasionally try a simple one-pot dish on the weekend. But his view on takeout has fundamentally shifted. He calls it a beautiful, frictionless convenience.
He didn't regress to his old mindset. He evolved.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this entire saga is an exploration of the modern convenience economy. Why do we actually pay a premium for food delivery? What is the actual product we are buying?
No, we certainly aren't just buying calories.
Exactly. We are buying the elimination of friction. We live in an era of profound time poverty and decision fatigue.
Time poverty.
It's that constant low-level hum of having too many responsibilities and not enough hours in the day. By the end of a typical workday, our cognitive battery is often completely drained.
Oh, completely.
We've made hundreds of decisions, solved problems, and navigated stress. So when John orders takeout now, he recognizes the exact service he is paying for.
Which is?
He is outsourcing the mental load of planning the meal, the physical act of methodical preparation, the stress of the execution, and crucially, the ultimate drudgery of the cleanup.
It completely reframes the concept of convenience. It's the difference between relying on a service out of fear and choosing it as a deliberate luxury.
Yes, exactly.
Because before this challenge, he ordered takeout because the kitchen was a daunting, mystifying place. He was hiding from his own lack of skill.
Right, it was avoidance.
But now the kitchen is demystified. He knows he can do it. But he also knows the exact cost in time, energy, cognitive load, and dirty dishes of doing it.
So when he celebrates his victory by ordering a pizza that very night.
Which I loved, by the way.
Right. There is no guilt whatsoever. The guilt is gone because he isn't failing to cook. He is actively purchasing his own time and peace of mind. He is savoring the fact that he doesn't have to wash the pizza box.
That is so true. When you understand the true holistic cost of creating something from scratch, you can accurately value the convenience of not doing it.
Right.
It changes how you look at the food arriving at your door. You stop seeing it as a lazy shortcut and start seeing it as a modern miracle.
Because someone else did the work.
Exactly. Someone else did the mise en place, someone else navigated the crucible of timing, someone else is scrubbing the pans in the graveyard of the sink. You were just enjoying the spark of creation without the friction.
It allows you to appreciate the labor of others while giving yourself permission to opt out of that labor when your own cognitive battery is depleted.
Such a great takeaway. Think about your own daily routines for a second. Do you have a task in your life right now that seems incredibly daunting?
We all have at least one.
For sure. Maybe it's a massive spreadsheet for work, organizing a chaotic garage, or, finally tackling your taxes.
The dreaded taxes.
Right. Something where you feel like you need to be a bomb disposal expert just to walk into the room. Could that task be completely demystified if you applied a little methodical preparation?
Break it down into chunks.
Exactly. If you did the real-world equivalent of mise en place to front-load the cognitive work,
you might just find that the execution isn't nearly as terrifying as you thought once the variables are isolated and the runway is cleared. But this raises an important question.
Let's hear it.
As we've seen with John's 20 little bowls, if mise en place reduces the mental friction of creating something, but significantly increases the physical friction of cleaning it up later.
Yeah.
Where else in your life are you currently trading mental peace for physical drudgery? And conversely, when you look at your budget and your daily habits, what other modern luxuries are you paying for right now simply to avoid washing the metaphorical box?
Wow. Trading mental peace for physical drudgery or paying a premium just to avoid washing the metaphorical box, that is a fantastic lens to view our daily choices through.
It really puts things into perspective.
It really does. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked this incredible journey from culinary intimidation to everyday epiphany. Keep discovering those insights hidden in your daily routines, and we will catch you next time on The Deep Dive.